Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Leo Show. Yes, and once again for our weekly encounter with my new format, Illuminati News, celebrating 20 years of Illuminati Confessions. We started back in 2006. Now it's 2026. Here we are with Leo Zagami in this new format. Some people have asked me, where is Christy? She might be back in the near future. In the meantime, she's working hard for the household. Yes. We are working. Let's start thanking those who made this show possible, our sponsors. Margot Rosada Minta, thank you, Margot Rosada Minta, and thank you, Daniel Estes. If you want to help us, you can do it with GoFundMe, or you can do it with Cash App, or you can do it also by purchasing my books. And today we're going to be discussing a couple of my books, in particular, Volume 11. I think we're going to also, of course, have to discuss also something that is outside of the Confessions of an Illuminati series, but is, of course, gaining a lot of attention because of the information that you can only find in this book. There's been many books published about Jeffrey Epstein, but The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, exposing Jeffrey Epstein and the most powerful Jewish sect in the world, is a unique book. There is no other book in the world that discusses this subject. So purchase your copy as soon as you can. And in regards to Volume 11, why Volume 11 is so important? Well, the title of today's show is giving it out. Are we mind control? Nothing is what it seems. Yes. Okay, and why nothing is what it seems? The whole crisis in the MAGA world erupted after the death of Charlie Kirk. And very few people know that one of the main people behind Charlie Kirk was actually the co-author of this important paper. This is the second edition of From Psyop to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory, by, at the time, Colonel Paul E. Valley, who was a commander of a very particular unit, and Major Michael Aquino, who then became himself Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. And of course, Paul E. Valley is a guy you might also have encountered at Fox News. And this is important. Why? Well, let me show you a couple of things. It's important because we are all being played. one against the other. We are all being mind controlled in one way or another. Like I stated, that is Paul Vallely, because he's known as Paul Valley, but also Paul Vallely, is now a Major General, U.S. Army, retired, and he is involved in Turning Point USA. There has been very little discussed about him, even from Candace Owen. One might expect. Now, Candace Owen has been very vocal about what she thinks is been a complete plot surrounding the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but she has never really gone deep into the Paul Vallely-Charlie Kirk connection, because this is a very important connection if you think about it, because I actually cited this gentleman in my book, in volume 11 of my Confessions, in a subchapter entitled appropriately Satanism and the Occult Origins of MK Ultra. Here we are. Okay. And here is the name of this gentleman we are discussing, who created the future of psychological operations together with Aquino, who is also the founder of the Temple of Set, ex-member of the Church of Satan, and this paper entitled From Psyop to Mindward, the Psychology of Victory. And here you have the name of this of Vallely, who we find here next to Charlie Kirk. And I repeat, this is very important. This is very important. Some people are even doubting that Charlie Kirk is dead because of the involvement of all these weird people. But imagine, this guy is on the council of Turning Point USA, and at the same time he was the guy who worked with Michael Aquino in the creation of a new kind of mind war, in fact appropriately called mind war rather than psychological operation. So let me define a little bit what this guy is all about, because he was active in the 7th Psychological Operations Group. And at the time, he was the superior of Michael Aquino. And this unit of psychological operations that was organized in the middle of the 1960s was moved for a period in San Francisco. They had been active also prior to that in Fort Bragg, but they started actually in California in a place called Moffett Federal Airfield. This is the place where this specific battalion of psychological operatives was born, and is part of Santa Clara County. Now, let me explain you a couple of things. This group was stationed for a period of time in San Francisco, and then they changed. They eventually will move out after the Presidio scandal, which brought a lot of attention in the Presidio scandal involving also Michael Aquino. For those people who remember it, it was a scandal also centered into alleged accusations of pedophilia made against Michael Aquino and his wife, the late Michael Aquino, because he's no longer with us. Now, they went back with the whole psychological operation group to Mottfeld Field, sorry, that's how it's called, the original joint civil military airport where this battalion started. And it's important because at the time, though, they were stationed in San Francisco when this paper came out. And San Francisco was the epicenter of what, like I explained in my book, had been MK Ultra's experiments, the epicenter of experiments conducted, of course, without the knowledge of the majority of the population, on an unsuspecting and often unwilling population. Michael Aquino met also at one point during the time he was stationed there, during the screening of Rosemary's Baby, he will meet also Anton LaVey. Anton LaVey is very important in our story because Anton LaVey is the guy who will change forever the story of Michael Aquino, because Aquino will start collaborating with Anton LaVey, arriving to the apex of the Church of Satan system until in the middle of the 70s, when there was actually the seventh psychological operation was activated in San Francisco. That was the moment in which Michael Aquino decided to separate from Anton LaVey and start his own path. Let's remember that Anton LaVey had founded the Church of Satan in San Francisco and had been very active within the satanic milieu of San Francisco from the year 1966. So in this whole thing of, we all hear about mind control, about MK Ultra. MK Ultra lasted only between officially as MK Ultra, it started in 1953, though it actually was known with other names prior to that. It had a couple of incarnations before that, but in reality, it was officialized with this name from 1953 to 1973. So it is also a very interesting synchronicity of events that brings Michael Aquino to work for the 7 psychological operations groups when they are about to constitute something new. The mind war that Michael Aquino talks about is a completely different approach. Let me describe you a little bit the differences with the prior approaches of psychological operations, the various methods. So, Win Vallely, who I repeat is still to this day one of the key figures in Turning Point USA, when Vallely decided with Aquino to put out this paper, they started to advocate a proactive, all-encompassing, and almost scientific method to controlling enemy mindsets, rather than merely targeting their perceptions. Their study they published is focused on overriding decision-making through total information control and atmospheric manipulation, whereas psychological operations, as we know them, are reactive and often integrated into a broader hybrid cognitive strategy. There is key differences between the mind war proposed by Vallely and what we still call psychological operations. So here we are, proactive versus reactive, mind war of Michael Aquino and Vallely versus the past. They wanted to rewrite the history of brainwashing and mind control. We know from those people who have read this book, this is the past, present, and future of mind control, from Sun Tzu to MK Ultra and beyond. And in fact, I started from the history of brainwashing from Pavlov all the way to social media in my account. And I talk, of course, of the mind war concept of Vallely and Aquino. The scope of control of Vallely that can be also in somehow seen within the work done for Turning Point USA is a specific one. They want to seize control of all information channels to dictate how an enemy population processes information. But once that enemy population is us, because let's not forget, there was a big change that was also, there was a big change with PSYOPs, and psychological operations were conducted for years abroad, but they were absolutely prohibited here in the United States of America. During the Obama era, as I explain also in my book, things changed. There was, they eventually, first of all, Obama renamed PSYOPs, though they came back, this term will be put back into use in 2017. In 2010, PSYOP was renamed Military Information Support Operation, MISO. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to, of course, detach from all the operations done in the past. The name had come out, let's say, it was too known. So PSYOPs that usually involve careful creation and dissemination of some thoughts that are meant to transform the mind of the enemy, of the perceived enemy, suddenly the name was changed. But then there was also another big change that happened during the Obama era. The actual change that I'm talking about is about regards instead the fact that no longer the military could be stopped when intervening on our own population, on the US population. So this is a very controversial thing, because it was like a change that Barack Hussein Obama put together. First of all, the PSYOPs transformed in MISO, so there was a different perception. But then after, there was also this possibility that was sanctioned by the Congress, that finally the psychological operations could also be addressed to the American population. This is something that never happened before. The American population was always left out. The psychological operations were always meant for our enemies abroad, or even for our friends and allies abroad in Europe and so on. They were subject to mind control operations. We here in the United States of America were lucky enough until during the Obama era, they passed this whole thing, this new law, and they created the possibility for us Americans to finally become ourselves victim of this mind control. So the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act under Obama. That is the name. I'm glad that somebody smart here defines herself as a blues lady, said the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, because that is really the turning point for America, and I think also for what was created later. Because if you think about it, Turning Point USA will not have been created without something like that. There will not have been the possibility of creating something like that. The Smith-Mundt, it was a moment in which we have created an opportunity that was not present since the very creation of the way the psychological operations and even the mind control activities of MK Ultra came into fruition was always to leave the the Americans out of it, though with MK Ultra we saw that that was not really respected. They tried also to operate in Canada. They tried to operate in Canada to avoid, the public scrutiny, and that is really what they tried to do for a long time. But I repeat, this is the moment of great transformation, which I've also underlined in volume 11 of my Confessions. You see here, Smith-Mundt was active since 1948, thanks to President Harry S. Truman. And soon after, we had the creation of course, Project Artichoke, and then we have, of course, MK Ultra. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012 is the moment in which they can now bombard us, we, the American people, with their own propaganda. And it was introduced by a member of the Democratic Party called David Adam Smith, together with the congressman, and this is, of course, to show you also that, it's not only the Democratic Party. This is the Republican Party and the Democratic Party together, because are we all mind control? Nothing is what it seems. This is the subject of today. The way we have been put one against the other over and over again by people like Paul Vallely, who, of course, is an important strategist within the Turning Point USA saga. Now, I believe Charlie Kirk was killed. I don't necessarily believe he's still alive. However, this guy here is probably responsible for a lot more than we are, of course, entitled to know. I repeat, this important figure of the mind control establishment is part of the advisory council of Turning Point USA. But also, imagine this. Paul Vallely now is part of the advisory council of Turning Point USA. At one point, we saw in the last few months of his life, Charlie Kirk started to wonder what was going on with the Epstein files. He was in contact with Candace Owen. Candace Owen openly speaks of the Sabbatean Frankist. The Sabbatean Frankist is a subject that, for example, Fuentes doesn't want to touch any longer. Candace Owens is, as you know, the political commentator and author that for years collaborated with Charlie Kirk. So somebody say, no way, totally, obviously fake. What is fake? Sorry. No, this is completely correct. Here we are talking about Paul Vallely, and he is in the board. And not only that, we have, of course, even photos, but you just have to go on his Wikipedia and you will see that he's involved with Turning Point USA. I'm not talking without having, of course, the necessary evidence. I'm not like Candace Owen that just likes to talk about it, this whole thing since Charlie Kirk died. I never really talk much about it. Of course, I discussed immediately after Charlie Kirk's death what was written on those bullets, the connection with Bella Ciao, and all that. But now we are, after many months, discussing something which is the future of Turning Point USA. Because a guy like Paul Vallely, who is a guy in charge of mind war, who is a guy who has devised this technique, is now, and guys, come and check. Here, the Wikipedia, if you don't want to believe me. It says here, he has served as military committee chairman for the Center for Security Policy and runs the conservative political organization Stand Up America US. Vallely was part of the leadership of Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA, seated on the advisory board. Okay. It's even here. Our team. Watch. Now, of course, the guy might have exited Turning Point USA because at the beginning of this year, his name came out and was, of course, the inconsistency of having a guy associated with Michael Aquino in the council of organization who basically deems to be Christian and whatnot, it was too much. You see, it's about manipulation and propaganda. Like I said, I wrote extensively about it in my book. Michael Aquino said, in regards to propaganda, quoting Michael Aquino, despite exhaustive efforts to respectabilize it, propaganda as a concept still labors under the negative image Joseph Goebbels and his propaganda ministry created during the Third Reich. Goebbels' passion for the utility of propaganda led him to an arrogant contempt for uncontrolled, purposeless information. In his eyes, the motivational and indoctrinational goals of the German propaganda effort fully justified the complete selection and packaging of information as might be convenient or expedient. However, he talks about having a strategy of truth. He also talks about the fact that the mind war needs to go beyond psychological operations. So there is certain differences with psychological operations. We talk about the scope of control, but we can also talk about the methods, technological versus psychological of mind war. Now, mind war, in addition to propaganda, uses also scientific methods. And that is something we have found in the recent kidnapping, if we're going to call it kidnapping or arrest of Nicolas Maduro, because in the methods of mind war, there is also the use of electromagnetic activity. The discombobulator that Donald J. Trump talked about is a mind war method. It's not a PSYOP method. A PSYOP method will be centered on propaganda, but will not be centered on atmospheric electromagnetic activity, aeronization, and also the use of extremely low frequency waves to affect brain function. What was done in Venezuela is part of the modern methods of mind war. And while modern PSYOPs and cognitive warfare are more focused on algorithm manipulation, misinformation, and behavioral economics to exploit cognitive biases, we have here a new operational function which uses also the discombobulator, as Donald J. Trump has described it. Which means that Vallely could have gone now, maybe left the council, the directory of the Turning Point USA to go back into active duty and collaborate on an operation like the one we saw with Nicolas Maduro. Now, regarding the targeting of the audience, mind war, as conceptualized in Vallely's and Aquino's paper from 1980, that was then republished in 2003, as I explained, because that was when the war in Iraq, and so the first war in Iraq, we had, of course, then the war in Iraq and the complete takeover of Iraq with the capitulating statue and all the show that followed. That was part of a specific mind war operation that was already taking over from the psychological operations of the past. Now, mind war is always being conceptualized and designed for foreign audiences, but hinted at the need for a total understanding of human psychology, whereas modern cognitive warfare explicitly targets the cognitive domain of both adversaries and domestic populations. However, we have seen then with the Smith-Mundt Reformation Act that is not anymore something that is precluded only for foreign audiences, but it can be essentially used also for our own American people here in the United States of America. Now, essentially, mind war, in the way that Valelli and Aquino envision, aims for a total systemic and preemptive psychological victory. This is not what modern PSYOP still claims to do, which is still in part of an hybrid warfare. So PSYOPs operate within an hybrid warfare focusing on influencing behavior in a fast-paced digital environment using social networks. And let's say that part of that kind of modality was seen, for example, during the Arab Spring revolutions of sorts in the Middle East. However, the mind war is instead the one that brings us with a much more aggressive stand, and that's why there is the possibility that now this kind of operation might be used in Iran and in Cuba. In Cuba, by the way, as I already wrote in volume 8 of my Confessions, there has already been attacks even against the American embassy based on extremely annoying frequencies that created a lot of problems with the famous Havana syndrome that was discussed for a time. Now, instead, Trump wants to maybe use itself, this technology, to take over Cuba, but also take over Iran, because Iran is really at the moment the place that, you see, we have only 3 million of the Epstein files. Totally, there are 6 million files. Only half has been published, and the DOJ has said they will not publish any other files. So half of the files, half of this of 6 million has been published, and the other half, where is it? Why are we not allowed to see it? And why is it all happening now? And why we are having the possibility of a war in Iran? Guys, Jeffrey Epstein was involved in weapon deals, and he was involved in the whole Iran-Contra affair. So, you know, at the moment you have, of course, the whole of the Middle East in turmoil, waiting for Donald J. Trump to attack Iran, but we are also being played because Trump wants to deflect the attention. You know, we are here, and this is also something that can be a massive PSYOP, or a massive PSYOP leading to an operation of mind control on a massive scale with the liberation of Iran. And of course, Trump intervenes to liberate Iran from the evil Ayatollahs. We all know that the Ayatollahs are evil. We all know, I mean, I wrote a whole book, volume 10 of my Confessions, which discuss in how Ayatollah Khomeini came to power after the revolution in 1979, and how, of course, the Shah was deposed after, for many decades, him and his father supporting, of course, first, of course, there was a more, let's say, there was an Iran with the Pahlavi more inclined to support the Nazis and the fascists, but after the Second World War, then there was instead the CIA, MI6 takeover, the coup d'etat, the Freemasons very active in Iran. There was also a very important link with the Cairo Lodge of the Illuminati. So here we are discussing now in 2026 the next move. Now, the next move is always about deflecting the attention. Recent investigative reporting has suggested that Jeffrey Epstein's early, rapid accumulation of wealth at high level was also possible because of his shadowy connections in the 1980s linked to the Iran-Contra affair, a covert operation where the US government used intermediaries to illegally sell weapons to Iran. They had an embargo. In theory, they shouldn't sell weapons to the enemy, to Iran, but they wanted to sell these weapons, the Reagan administration, for a specific reason: liberate some American hostages taken by Hezbollah, that is notoriously linked to Iran. And this whole scandal, armed traffic deal, went on in the early 80s, from 1981 to 1986, under the Reagan administration, that used then the money of the weapons sold to Iran to buy weapons to fund the Contras and the anti-Sandinistas rebel groups in Nicaragua. So here we have a complete, connection with everything that goes on now. Jeffrey Epstein involved with the Iran-Contra affair, and of course with Les Wexner, who, like I explained in my book of Jeffrey Epstein, has a very important role in all the Jeffrey Epstein affair with the Ghislaine Maxwell, because he was also Sabatian Frankist. He is the one, Les Wexner, who founded the Illuminati mega group in 1991 that includes very powerful people that backed also Jeffrey Epstein. Let me show you this article of great importance to learn more of what's going on today. Jeffrey Epstein was linked to Israel, as we know, but also to the CIA. The American Conservative, this article says, Epstein, Israel, and the CIA, how the Iran-Contra planes landed at Les Wexner's base. So imagine this. Weapons for the Islamic Republic of Iran, sold by the super conservative forces of America and Ronald Reagan and all these people who claim to be the enemies, of course, of the Ayatollahs. But in any case, Jeffrey Epstein helped Les Wexner repurpose the CIA Iran-Contra planes from unsmuggling to shipping lingerie after. So, you see, it goes from shipping lingerie and young girls to shipping weapons. So from shipping weapons to shipping lingerie, and everything is very fluid. It's crazy. It's insane. Think about it. And then we have the former Prince Andrew, which is another important figure that happens to be, of course, a protagonist of my book, The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster. Now, the former Prince Andrew does something really weird in these images that I'm about to show you, because, of course, everybody says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he's called now, he's no longer a prince, is on top of a girl in these photos, but he's not doing something that you will, this doesn't seem sexual. this is weird, guys. This is something very weird. These 3 pictures, a man believed to be, of course, Prince Andrew, is a former Prince Andrew, the disgraced former Duke, they call him here. But watch here. He's touching her, especially in this pic, like you will see sometimes. This is the kind of thing a healer will do, touching specific part of your body. I mean, it doesn't seem like these people were naked and having sex here. There's something really weird going on with the former Prince Andrew. And on the back of Prince Andrew here, you have, of course, somebody who might be Jeffrey Epstein sitting down. But why is Prince Andrew picture crouching on all fours over a woman whose face is redacted? Let's remember that in these documents that have been published, and they're only half of what is left, we don't see images of women. They have been all erased, all covered. The only woman is Ghislaine Maxwell, and then you have men, of course. However, the DOJ has erroneously, between brackets, left the names of many of the victims. They spent months saying that they would take out the name of the victims. Instead, they didn't. There is a lot of disappointment. And this is the testimony of one of the victims.
As far as Todd Blanche commenting on the privacy of survivors, you know what? Give me a break. You're not going to gaslight me into believing that this administration has prioritized the survivors or have cared about the survivors. You and the DOJ, let me be very clear, the DOJ, when they were recklessly releasing these documents, there were several victims that were not redacted. And I'm not talking about myself because I'm okay not being redacted. But what about the girls that were Jane Does, from the very beginning when it all started? And instead of following that lead of keeping them, as Jane Does and caring about their privacy, the DOJ released documents with their names. Some of them had their phone numbers and addresses attached. And you want to preach about transparency? Perhaps you were being, to me, it's deliberate. I mean, I don't know how anybody can look at this and not see the way in which they're releasing information is deliberate. It's retribution in my eyes. And I think, where's Pam Bondi in all this? Why didn't she give the press conference?
Welcome to the Leo Zegami Show. Thanks to our sponsors, Daniel Estes and Margot Zada Mint. We are able to bring you this weekly show. Also, thanks to the people who purchased my books. We are discussing today a very complex topic. We have seen some very weird images of a former prince who seems to be doing a ritual, or maybe he's actually involved in an hypnotism session, because that's also something that you can do when you're hypnotizing people, no? So it is pretty interesting what is going on here. In the meantime, we have the possibility of an all-out war with Iran, which of course will deflect from all the interests that at the moment we have on the Epstein files, and also on other events of interest. We always need to deflect the attention, with caricatures, even like this Batman fellow who at one point showed up here in California discussing what is going on with ICE. It seems like it's all a great big show.
What the are we doing here? Seriously, you have had months to prepare for this upcoming event. I don't give a damn if this is outside of decorum. People are dying on our streets every single day.
Okay, so we had also Batman intervening at a council meeting here in California, very upset about what's going on with ICE. We saw also this whole thing unfolding since the killing of Preti. We saw also a lot of chaos and distraction, because let's not forget that the more we distract people, the less they understand the importance of the Epstein files that just revealed that Elon Musk is a great liar, for example. Elon Musk was the guy who accused Bill Gates, saying that Bill Gates should have no place near children because he was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and now the documents that have been published state that Elon Musk wanted to go to Little St. James, to Jeffrey Epstein's island, for the wildest party. But a few months ago,
Chapter in the long-running feud between two billionaires, Elon Musk and Bill Gates, are clashing again, this time over foreign aid cuts. Earlier this month, Gates accused Musk of endangering vulnerable children by slashing U.S. foreign aid programs, including funding for HIV prevention and vaccines. Well, today...
Let's not forget that Bill Gates then was a special guest at the White House later on, after this. What a show!
Musk fired back at the Bloomberg Qatar Economic Forum, calling Gates' claims false and demanding evidence.
Yeah, it's a huge lie.
I know, you've said that already. I wondered,
also,
and I'm just...
who does Bill Gates think he is to make comments about the welfare of children, given that he frequented Jeffrey Epstein?
He frequented Jeffrey Epstein, and he didn't? Elon Musk also frequented Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this guy is really no shame.
He said he regrets those, and he's... Tonight, a woman who disappeared last year is breaking her silence. Hannah Kobayashi.
Whatever, guys. Whatever. I mean, it's insane. The level of hypocrisy of people like Elon Musk attacking Bill Gates, and now the latest, the latest thing that Elon Musk says is the Epstein files don't matter. Of course they don't matter. Once they show that you went and had lunch at your SpaceX headquarters with Jeffrey Epstein, that you actually asked Jeffrey Epstein to participate to the wildest parties. Of course, now he insists Epstein files don't matter. Not only that, he actually requires, he is asking for the files that are called a great distraction, that to be removed. He says things that are out of this world. I mean, the reaction that Elon Musk is having is pretty pathetic. Elon Musk says his emails with Jeffrey Epstein are misinterpreted, calls release of files a distraction. A distraction from what, sorry? A distraction from what? In the meantime, my friend Alex Jones said, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to look in. If I find something wrong with Trump, but I don't think so. We already analyzed. Sorry, Alex. You finally stated that you were one of the first people to denounce what was going on at Jeffrey Epstein's island. But then now you are almost like impossibilitated from revealing to us the full truth when it involves, of course, Donald J. Trump, because Donald J. Trump is involved. Now, he might not have forced a minor to have oral sex with him. We don't have any confirmation of any wrongdoing from Trump. However, there is a lot of interesting elements that are coming out of the Epstein files. And why is the conservative world ignoring the whole thing? Here we have a bunch of alternative media pundits and journalists who have always discussed the possibility that once Trump was elected, we will have finally a full prospect of what was going on behind the scenes with Jeffrey Epstein. And now all those pundits, all those journalists are completely silent. They are actually refusing to have me on the air to discuss my new book. This new book is actually considered not totally in line. Not totally in line with what? With you being brainwashed? Because then it's about brainwashed. It's about being brainwashed. Incredible, guys. Incredible. However, in regards to what is going on here with all this brainwashing, I mean, for millennia, you know, we had people influencing other people, influencing their perceptions and everything else. And of course, now that we have technology that is out of this world, that is really prone to persuade people. We tend to just fall for all these distractions. The future of brainwashing, guys, like I explained also in volume 11, it's between neuroscience and social media. It's about, of course, there's also the electromagnetic fields that can be utilized as Aquino wanted and also as Valelli wanted. Pavlov started, you remember, his experiments. It was all about influencing some dogs initially, before he got Lenin to support him. And at that point, like I explained in volume 11, Lenin gave him access to all the various hospitals of the Soviet Union, of the newborn Soviet Union, so he could finally conduct his experiments on humans. It's about conditioning humans. William Butler Yeats once said, and I'm quoting William Butler Yeats, who was, by the way, also notorious member of an important secret society. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born? That is to be interpreted, this. It's an interesting citation. Pavlov was lyrical almost. He was very outspoken about the future of mind control and science. And he would have even made Machiavelli kind of optimist in the way Machiavelli, who of course wrote The Prince, didn't know about all these opportunities that technology will give us. When you see Turning Point USA today, a big spectacle, lights, announcement, the whole thing conducted almost as a concert. Now, I have my own experience here in the Coachella Valley with Donald J. Trump. And I really, I've been in my past life almost a producer, record producer. I was, of course, involved in the music business. I know about, show business. And I noticed the similarities were striking. It wasn't really like in the past, you had the usual politician talking to the audience, almost inevitably bored after the first half an hour because it will be kind of repetitive, the tone will not be. Instead, in Donald J. Trump's world and in his political landscape and proposal, it was about entertainment. It was about flashing videos, lights, audio, blasting. And this is the difference. There is a complete difference with the way that they are, pushing the audience, and they managed to definitely they managed to get us. So everything is being studied in a way that in the end they convinced us that Trump was the guy who will bring us to a new level, a new political level. Somebody is asking me if the wife of Charlie Kirk was on it. Now, we can't have that certainty for sure, but there's a lot of the things that are said every week by Candace Owens that definitely give us that kind of outlook. I mean, Erika Kirk was definitely a person who, after the death of Charlie Kirk, has behaved in a very strange way. If you are the widow of a person who has lost his life in a tragedy like what happened with Charlie Kirk, I don't think you will be going around kissing the vice president and dressing up like you are also going to a rock concert. I mean, the whole thing is really weird, guys. Definitely. It's so very weird. This Operation Midnight Climax that was conducted during the MK Ultra years in San Francisco is another interesting topic that might have also in a way be used, that Operation Midnight Climax and the results of it for then the experiments and the paper laid down by Valelli and Aquino. Aquino was never part, he was, he said, always to be part of MK Ultra. And at the time, of course, the few people that were experts in psychological operations and mind control were all taken in and worked in some capacity in the various sub-projects of MK Ultra. But what happened in San Francisco definitely is the emerging of the occult out of a acid experiment fueled with tons of LSD. Let's not forget, the streets of San Francisco, the flower power, and all that, though, had a dark side of the age of Aquarius. While you had all those hippies smoking marijuana in the streets of San Francisco, you had also in secret people like Anton LaVey doing a ritual at the former Russian embassy for the invocation of his demon brother that became after a film by Kenneth Anger. So it's kind of interesting how then Aquino fits into the whole thing. And of course, nothing, like I said, is like what it seems. And we are almost getting at the end of today's show, though I notice that you are very interested in this topic, and I'm glad that you have joined me today, because there is an interesting book that was published after the Second World War that really needs to have more attention. It's a book written by William Sargant, a book called Battle of the Mind. Battle of the Mind was published originally in 1957. So just after the beginning of MK Ultra, 1957, we were also starting to see, we were about to see the launch of a very important book that then will become a film. I'm talking about The Manchurian Candidate, that came out in 1959. There is a citation, though, that from that book I would like to read to you today. It's a citation that comes from a sermon on the work of the Holy Spirit of George Salmon, made in 1859. We have still much to learn, and I'm quoting here, as to the laws according to which the mind and body act on one another, and according to which one mind acts on another. But it is certain that a great part of this mutual action can be reduced to general laws, and that the more we know of such laws, the greater our power to benefit others will be. If, when through the operation of such laws, surprising events take place, and we cry out, "Such is the will of God," instead of setting ourselves to inquire whether it was the will of God to give us power to bring about or to prevent these results, then our conduct is not pity, but sinful laziness. George Salmon, 1859. Thank you so much for following the Leo Zagami show today. Keep on supporting this show. And of course, the more you support it, the more shows we will try to produce during the week. God bless you all, and I see you for the next Leo Zagami show, Illuminati Confessions, actually Illuminati News in our new format.
Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, I'm trying to keep it on. Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, I'm trying to keep it on.